The young officer leaned against the carnival booth, arms crossed, smirking at the old man in the worn red jacket. $200 if you hit one plate, Pops, but let's be real, those hands are shaking too much to hit anything. The elderly man with white hair and beard just looked down at the counter, his sad eyes reflecting years of something the officer couldn't begin to understand. That moment of casual disrespect was about to become the most humbling experience of that young man's life. His name was Robert Chen, 72 years old, and he spent most Saturday afternoons walking through the county fair alone. The red jacket he wore over his faded grey t-shirt had seen better days, patched at the elbows, collar frayed from decades of wear. His white beard needed trimming, and his posture suggested a man carrying invisible weight on his shoulders. People rarely gave him a second glance. Just another old-timer shuffling through life, counting pennies, probably living on a fixed income. Nothing special, nothing remarkable. That's what everyone saw. That's what they always saw. Robert had stopped at the knife-throwing booth more out of habit than interest. The painted wooden plates spinning on their stands reminded him of something from long ago, something he tried not to think about too often. The carnival worker, a kid maybe 19, was taking a break, and the young police officer working security detail had wandered over, bored with his shift. He'd been making comments all evening about the older fairgoers, loud enough for them to hear, getting laughs from his buddies stationed nearby. "You thinking about trying, old man?" The officer's name tag read, Morrison. $5 for 3 throws, though I'd save your money if I were you. These games are rigged anyway. He said it with that particular tone young men use when they think age equals irrelevance. Robert said nothing, just studied the spinning plates with those sad, serious eyes. "What's wrong? Can't afford it? Or maybe those hands are too arthritic." Morrison laughed, nudging his partner who'd walked up. "Hey, check this out. Cramps here looks like he's planning strategy for a carnival game." The carnival worker returned, a college kid named Danny who'd been running the booth all summer. He glanced at Robert, then at the officers. "It's actually not rigged, sir. If you can throw, you can win. Nobody's hit all 6 plates in one round all month, though. There's a special prize for that." Morrison snorted. "Special prize? What, a teddy bear?" Danny shook his head. "No, sir. $1,000. Owner's challenge. Been up since May." That got Morrison's attention. $1,000? For hitting 6 plates? He straightened up, suddenly interested. "How much to play?" Danny replied. $5 for 3 knives, but for the special challenge it's $20 for 6 throws. You have to hit all 6 plates in sequence. Miss one, you're done." Morrison pulled out his wallet immediately. "I'll take that action. I did knife training at the academy. Watch and learn, Pops." The officer paid his 20, took his position, and grabbed the first balanced throwing knife. He wound up with exaggerated confidence, threw hard, and missed the first plate by 6 inches. The knife clattered against the backboard. His face reddened. The second throw hit the wooden frame but bounced off. The third actually struck a plate but didn't stick, just scraped across the surface. By the 6th throw, Morrison was furious, having hit only 2 plates, neither of them clean. "This is rigged. These knives are weighted wrong," Danny just shrugged. "They're regulation throwing knives, sir, same ones we've used all summer." Morrison turned to Robert, who hadn't moved from his spot 3 feet away. "Think you could do better, old man? I'd love to see you try." His tone dripped with challenge and mockery. His partner laughed. "Come on, Morrison. Leave the guy alone. He probably can't even lift the knives." But something in Robert's expression had shifted just slightly. The sadness was still there, but underneath it something else flickered. Memory, maybe. Or muscle memory. Robert reached into his worn jacket pocket and pulled out a $20 bill, placing it on the counter with a hand that didn't shake at all. Morrison's eyes widened. "No way. You're actually going to try?" Robert nodded once, slowly. Danny took the money, looking uncertain. "Sir, you understand the rules? 6 throws, 6 plates, all have to stick, and you can't take too long between throws. It's meant to be done in sequence." Robert's voice, when he finally spoke, was quiet, barely above a whisper. "I understand." He picked up the first knife, feeling its weight, testing the balance. His fingers moved along the handle with the kind of familiarity that comes from thousands of repetitions, not dozens. Morrison crossed his arms, ready to enjoy the show. "This is going to be good. Hey, Martinez, get your phone out. Film this." The other officer pulled out his cell phone, already grinning. Robert's stance changed. His feet positioned shoulder-width apart, his weight shifted forward slightly, his breathing slowed and steadied. The sad expression never left his face, but his eyes locked onto the first spinning plate with absolute focus. He drew back his arm, not with the wild wind-up Morrison had used, but with controlled, economical motion. The knife left his hand in a smooth, practiced release. It flew through the air in a perfect rotation and struck the centre of the first plate with a solid thunk that made everyone within 20 feet turn and look. Before the murmurs could start, Robert had already picked up the second knife. Same stance, same controlled motion, same result. The second plate took the blade dead centre. The third throw came even faster. Thunk. The fourth. Thunk. By the fifth throw, a crowd had gathered, forming a semicircle around the booth. Morrison's smirk had vanished completely. Danny stood with his mouth open. The fifth knife hit so precisely it split the painted circle on the plate exactly in half. Robert held the sixth knife for just a moment longer. His hand was steady as stone. His breathing was calm. Then he threw, and the final blade struck the last plate with the same perfect accuracy as the previous 5. 6 plates, 6 knives, 6 perfect hits. Not one miss, not one bounce, not even a wobble. The crowd erupted in applause and cheers. Morrison stood frozen, his face drained of colour. Danny stammered. "Sir, that was incredible. I need to get my manager. Nobody's ever done that. The owner needs to verify this." He ran off toward the main office, leaving Robert standing there, still wearing that same sad, serious expression, as if throwing 6 perfect knife strikes was as ordinary as breathing. Morrison stepped closer, his earlier arrogance completely gone, replaced by something between confusion and dawning respect. "Where did you learn to throw like that?" Robert didn't answer immediately. He just looked at the 6 knives still embedded in the plates, still quivering slightly from impact. An older man in the crowd, maybe 60, wearing a Vietnam veteran's cap, pushed forward. He'd been watching from the beginning. He stared at Robert's face, then at the red jacket, then back at the face. His own expression changed to shock. Wait a minute. Robert Chen? Master Sergeant Robert Chen. The crowd went quiet. Morrison looked between the veteran and Robert. "You know him?" The older veteran's voice shook. "Know him? This man was a legend. Special Forces. He trained half the Army's combat instructors in close quarters, combat and blade work back in the 70s and 80s. He turned to Robert. "Sir, is it really you?" Robert nodded once, that same small, slow nod. The older veteran immediately stood straighter. "I trained under you in 1976, Fort Bragg. You probably don't remember me. There were hundreds of us. But I remember you. Everyone remembers you." Morrison's face had gone from red to white to grey. His partner had lowered the phone, no longer filming, just staring. The older veteran continued, his voice growing stronger. Master Sergeant Chen held every knife-throwing record in Special Forces for 15 years. He could put a blade through a playing card at 30 feet. He trained Navy SEALs, Army Rangers, Delta Force operators. He served 3 tours in Vietnam, 2 in classified operations nobody's allowed to talk about. He received the Silver Star, 2 Bronze Stars, and a Purple Heart. He looked at Morrison. "And you mocked him. Called him Pops." The manager arrived, a portly man in his 50s, carrying a lockbox and looking flustered. Danny was explaining what happened, pointing at the plates, at Robert, at the crowd. The manager looked at the 6 knives still perfectly embedded and let out a low whistle. "Well, I'll be damned. 23 years running this fair, never thought I'd actually have to pay this out." He opened the lockbox and started counting $100 bills. Morrison stepped forward, his voice barely working. "Sir, I apologize. I had no idea. I was completely out of line." Robert turned those sad eyes to the young officer. "You didn't know what you didn't know, but you knew enough to be respectful. You chose not to be." His voice remained quiet, but every word carried weight. Age doesn't make someone useless. Appearance doesn't tell you anything about what a person has done or what they're capable of. You see a worn jacket and grey hair and you assume weakness. That assumption makes you the weak one. The older veteran spoke up again. Master Sergeant Chen retired in 1989 after 28 years of service. He lost his wife to cancer in 1995, lost his son, also military in Iraq, in 2004. He doesn't talk much about any of it. Just comes to the fair, walks around, keeps to himself. Most people here have no idea they're in the presence of a genuine American hero. Robert's expression tightened slightly at the word hero, a flash of pain crossing his weathered features. "I'm not a hero, I'm just old." The manager finished counting and handed Robert a stack of bills. $1,000, sir. Congratulations. And if you don't mind, I'd like to take a photo for our wall. First person to ever complete the challenge." Robert pocketed the money without counting it and shook his head at the photo request. No pictures, but thank you. He turned to leave, and the crowd parted for him like water. Morrison called after him. "Sir, please, let me make this right. Can I buy you dinner? Coffee? Something?" Robert paused, his back still turned. "You can make it right by remembering this moment the next time you see someone you think isn't worth your respect. Everyone you meet is fighting battles you know nothing about. Everyone has a story. Everyone deserves basic human dignity." Then he walked away, the red jacket disappearing into the evening crowd, leaving Morrison standing there with his partner, both of them silent, both of them changed. Danny started removing the knives from the plates, examining each impact point. Perfect center mass on every single one. I've seen thousands of people try this game. Nobody throws like that. Nobody. The older veteran lingered, watching Robert's retreating form. He used to say that knife throwing wasn't about strength or aggression. It was about control, patience, and respect for the weapon. Guess that applies to more than just knives. He looked at Morrison. "You're young. You'll make mistakes. But if you're smart, you'll learn from them. That man could have embarrassed you worse. He chose mercy." Morrison nodded slowly, his earlier cockiness completely shattered. "I feel like an idiot." His partner put a hand on his shoulder. "You should. But you'll be better for it. I know I will. I was laughing right along with you." They stood there for a long moment, watching the crowd disperse, the carnival lights blinking overhead, the distant sound of music and laughter filling the air. But all Morrison could see was those 6 knives, perfectly thrown, and the sad, serious face of a man he'd dismissed as irrelevant. Robert Chen walked through the fairgrounds alone just as he'd arrived, the weight of the $1,000 in his pocket meaning less than nothing compared to the weight he always carried. The weight of memories, of lost brothers, of a lost son, of a lost wife. The weight of being invisible in a world that had once depended on him. But for just a few minutes, standing at that booth, holding those knives, he'd felt the old certainty return, the old purpose, the old skill that time and age couldn't fully erase. It wasn't about showing off. It wasn't about the money. It was about reminding himself that he was still here, still capable, still worth something, even if only to himself. The next day, Morrison showed up for his shift at the police station early. He requested a meeting with his sergeant and asked to be assigned to the department's community outreach program, specifically working with veterans. When asked why, he simply said he'd learned something important about respect and wanted to do better. His sergeant approved the transfer. Sometimes the lessons that change us come from the people we least expect, in moments we'll never forget. Sometimes an old man in a worn red jacket teaches us more in 5 minutes than we learned in years of thinking we knew everything. And sometimes 6 perfectly thrown knives are enough to remind us that everyone we meet deserves our respect, because we never truly know what they've survived, what they've sacrificed, or what they're still capable of when the moment demands it.